You ever meet someone who seems totally fine? They're funny, put together, always on the move. Then one day, you hear they've hit a wall, burned out, anxious, or depressed. And you're like, where did that come from? This isn't about diagnosing your friends or yourself. It's about recognizing patterns we dismiss as quirks or personality traits. But sometimes they're smoke signals, subtle, silent, and screaming for help. Rejection panic button, aka rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD. Someone takes a little too long to text back, like 43 minutes. Suddenly your stomach drops, your pulse spikes, and your brain's whispering,
"They hate you. They finally figured it out."
This isn't just hurt feelings. This is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or RSD for short. It's a condition where your brain interprets even minor social slights as full-scale emotional trauma. It doesn't wait for proof, a change in tone, a delayed reply, a vague look. It sets off the alarms instantly. One small crack in connection, and boom, you're in a full-body panic. People with RSD aren't being overly dramatic. Their brains are wired to react this way, especially common in people with ADHD or complex trauma. What looks like overreaction is really hypersensitivity to perceived danger. To cope, they become perfectionists, trying to outrun rejection, or people pleasers, bending into whatever shape keeps them safe, or ghosters, bailing before anyone can get close enough to hurt them. And here's the thing, it's exhausting. Living with a brain that hits emergency mode over neutral moments takes a serious toll. It's not weakness, it's survival mode stuck in overdrive. So if someone melts down over a mild comment, or needs more reassurance than makes sense, don't roll your eyes. Their brain's fighting a battle you can't see. Disaster movie mind, also known as catastrophic thinking. You forget to CC someone on an email. Normal brain says, "Oops, I'll fix that." Your brain, already halfway through a disaster film titled "Fired by Lunch, Homeless by Friday." You're late to a date. They haven't texted back. Your brain's already played the funeral. You're single forever. You die alone. The dog doesn't even come to the service. This is catastrophic thinking, a brain glitch that takes minor problems and cranks them up to DEFCON 1. It's not just stress. It's not just imagination. It's a neurological overreaction that treats every hiccup like a harbinger of total collapse. You don't just worry about losing your job. You picture the day it happens, the box with your things, the walk of shame, the Instagram bio update to former professional, now full-time failure. You see it. For people with anxiety disorders, this kind of thinking is constant. It's the brain trying to prepare for disaster by living it in advance. Here's the trick. Catastrophic thinkers often look like they care too much. They triple-check their work. They write 5-paragraph apology texts. They anticipate every bad outcome so they can be ready. But what they're really doing is trying to outsmart a fear they feel, not a threat that's real. And the worst part? It's exhausting. You spend your day in a war that never happened, and even when things turn out fine, your brain just goes, "Yeah, but next time," and resets the timer. This isn't pessimism. It's not being a drama queen. It's your nervous system in overdrive, hijacking logic and turning your thoughts into disaster trailers. So if you catch yourself scripting out your downfall because of a typo or a weird glance, stop, breathe, say it out loud. That's a thought, not a prophecy, because the world's not ending, not today. Compulsive body habits, also known as body-focused repetitive behaviors, or BFRBs, nail biting, skin picking, hair pulling, looks like a bad habit, feels like a compulsion. These are BFRBs, body-focused repetitive behaviors. When your brain doesn't know how to calm itself, it tells your hands to do something, anything, to feel in control. The result? Bleeding fingers, bald patches, hidden scars, all masked as fidgeting, boredom, or a quirky tic. But underneath, anxiety, trauma, OCD, stress looking for a pressure valve. It's not about vanity, it's not about being gross, it's about self-soothing gone sideways, about a nervous system that says, "Fix something now," and hands that answer, even when you beg them not to. People hide it. Long sleeves in summer, makeup layered over scabs, hats pulled low. not because they're ashamed of how they look, but because they're tired of explaining why they can't just stop. These behaviors often ramp up during stress, shame, or overstimulation. They feel soothing in the moment, a weird sense of relief, like scratching an itch you didn't know you had. But afterward, regret, pain, a body that feels like a battlefield. This isn't a quirk, it's a silent scream, a way your brain copes when it doesn't know how to ask for help. Sorry syndrome, aka over-apologizing. You bump into a chair. You say sorry. Someone cuts in front of you in line. You say sorry. Your order gets messed up. You apologize for that too. It looks like kindness, humility, politeness. But chronic apologizing isn't always about being nice. Sometimes it's about being afraid to take up space, afraid to be seen as difficult, afraid that the smallest misstep will make people leave, judge you, or get angry. This is the voice of someone who learned early on that being liked was the safest path, that being invisible was the best defense, that if you apologize first, maybe no one else would hurt you. It's often rooted in trauma, in growing up around volatility or criticism, where apologies were a survival skill. Keep everyone happy or brace for the worst. The problem? That survival skill sticks, even when you're safe, even when there's nothing to apologize for. And it chips away at your confidence, your boundaries, your sense of worth. You shrink yourself until sorry becomes a reflex, not a choice. It's not a flaw, it's a defense. But over time, it turns into a cage, one that says, don't be too much, don't be a burden, don't take up space. But here's the truth. You're allowed to exist without apologizing for it. You don't owe the world an "I'm sorry" just for breathing. The reassurance trap, also known as excessive reassurance seeking. You ask, are we okay? They say yes. Sweet relief, like a cool breeze after a panic attack in a sauna. But then, 5 minutes later, wait, were they just being polite? Are we actually okay? Or were they fake okay? And now you're back in the group chat, like it's a courtroom cross-examination. Welcome to the reassurance trap, the mental hamster wheel, where your anxiety demands answers it doesn't even trust. You don't just ask once. You ask 3 different ways, spaced out over time, like a psychological boomerang. Are you mad? Did I do something wrong? You sure everything's chill? You're not trying to be annoying. You're trying to survive a brain that screams, I need certainty, or I will combust. And here's the kicker. Even when you get reassurance, your brain treats it like a sketchy coupon. Thanks, but I'll need to validate this 5 more times just to be safe. This isn't you fishing for compliments. It's your nervous system trying to tranquilize itself using external validation as a sedative. People with anxiety, OCD, or rejection sensitivity often fall into this loop. It's not about being dramatic. It's about trying to feel safe in a world your brain treats like a constantly shifting minefield. But here's the truth. No amount of, yes, you're good, will work if your brain doesn't believe it internally. Reassurance feels great for a second. Then the anxiety taps you on the shoulder like, hey, what if they were lying to protect your feelings? The fix? Try asking yourself, do I need information or do I need to manage this feeling? Because most of the time, it's not a fact problem. It's a feelings problem, disguised in a trench coat, holding a clipboard. Busy equals safe, aka always staying busy. You're always working, always cleaning, organizing your closet by color, reorganizing it by mood, alphabetizing your spice rack again. People say, wow, you're so productive. And you smile like, haha, yeah. But deep down, you know you're running. Running from stillness, from silence, from thoughts that hurt when it gets quiet enough to hear them. This isn't ambition. It's avoidance dressed as hustle. Always staying busy is one of the most praised coping mechanisms out there. You get gold stars for it. Look how driven they are. But sometimes, it's less about drive and more about distraction. Busyness becomes armor. If you keep moving, maybe you won't have to feel. Feel the grief, the loneliness, the burnout, the what am I even doing with my life? Spiral waiting at the edge of stillness. This coping strategy is especially common for people dealing with anxiety, trauma, or depression. It gives the illusion of control when everything inside feels shaky. But here's the catch. You can't outrun your brain. At some point, it catches up. Usually when the to-do list is done, the room is clean, and you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. If that sounds familiar, it's worth asking, what am I avoiding by staying this busy? Because rest isn't laziness, and silence isn't your enemy. Sometimes it's the only space where healing gets a word in. The hobby hopper, constantly changing interests. New hobby, you're in, fully committed. Credit cards hot, Amazon carts empty. You're 3 playlists deep into beginner tips for sourdough fencing while rollerblading. For 2 weeks, this thing is your identity. You're evangelizing it like a new religion. And then, it's over, cold turkey. The gear collects dust. The passion vanishes like your motivation on laundry day. Enter the hobby hopper. It looks spontaneous, even charming, like you're just really curious. But sometimes it's your brain chasing dopamine like a bloodhound on a caffeine drip. This pattern often shows up in ADHD, bipolar disorder, especially hypomania, or low-key depression disguised as wanderlust. It's not laziness, it's not flakiness, it's neurological speed dating. You're not bored because nothing interests you. You're bored because everything does for about 9 days. The brain wants novelty, something shiny, something to spark a feeling. Because underneath the hobby carousel, there's often a quiet fear. What if I stop and feel nothing? So you keep jumping, not because you're unserious, but because your brain is wired to search for stimulation. Then drop it the second the chemicals wear off. If your closet looks like a thrift store for abandoned hobbies, don't beat yourself up. Just ask, am I chasing joy, or just running from the crash that comes after it? Mr. or Ms. Calm, aka emotional overcontrol. You never cry, you never yell. You could be in the middle of a breakup, a house fire, and a global crisis and still be like, no worries, it's all good. People call you chill, emotionally mature, a Zen master. But inside, you feel like a volcano that's learned how to wear khakis and sit in meetings. Emotional overcontrol isn't calm, it's camouflage. It's survival mode that got stuck in do not disturb forever. This usually starts early, when showing emotion got you hurt, ignored, or punished. So your brain made a rule, feelings equals unsafe, stuff it down, smile through it, lock it up. You learn to analyze instead of express, to fix instead of feel. You become the stable one. People trust you, lean on you, unload their baggage on you, because you never crack. But just because you don't show the emotion doesn't mean it's not there. It builds up, quietly, like steam in a pressure cooker. Eventually, the body says what the face won't. Maybe it shows up as migraines, insomnia, burnout, or that random urge to move to a cabin and ghost everyone you know. Being steady isn't bad, but if your emotional range has 2 settings, fine and I'm fine, you might not be managing your emotions. You might be hiding from them. You're not cold. You're not broken. You're just used to keeping the lid on tight. But healing doesn't come from control. It comes from letting yourself feel without flinching. The lone wolf, hyperindependence. You never ask for help, like ever. You could be bleeding out, juggling 5 breakdowns, and Googling how to give yourself stitches, and still be like, nah, I got this. To the outside world, you look strong, self-sufficient, independent, but this isn't confidence, it's hyper-independence. And plot twist, it's usually born from trauma. Somewhere along the way, maybe as a kid, maybe in a past relationship, your brain got the message, trust equals danger. Relying on people meant disappointment, or betrayal, or getting let down one too many times. So now your default is, do it yourself. Don't need anyone. Don't owe anyone. Don't get hurt. But here's the thing. Never needing anyone sounds cool until it's 2 a.m. and you're crying in your car over something you won't talk about with anyone because you don't want to be a burden. Inside, it gets lonely. Deeply lonely. Because while independence is a skill, hyperindependence is a shield. And when you carry everything alone, you don't just avoid pain. You also block connection. Letting someone in feels like handing them a loaded weapon. But vulnerability isn't weakness. It's how you build trust, not just test it. You don't have to carry the whole world on your back to be strong. Sometimes strength is saying, I need help. Or even, can you just sit with me while I fall apart a little? The freeze response, aka chronic procrastination. You want to do it. You mean to do it. The to-do list is right there. The task is not that hard. And yet, nothing. Hours pass, then days. Now the guilt kicks in like a debt collector. Welcome to the freeze response, also known as chronic procrastination's evil twin. And no, it's not laziness, it's mental quicksand. This happens when your brain hits task overload and responds by doing absolutely nothing. Not because it doesn't care, but because it cares too much. People with anxiety, ADHD, or perfectionism often freeze like a laptop with 37 tabs open and 2% battery left. Your brain's like, let's think about doing it so hard that we never actually do it. It's not that you don't want to finish the thing. It's that your brain has decided the stakes are suddenly life or death. If it's not perfect, it's a failure. If you start wrong, you'll ruin everything. If you finish, well, now it'll be judged. So instead of risking all that, your brain hits pause, not productive pause, paralyzed pause, which feels like being trapped in your own mind with a clock ticking louder every second. And the kicker, the longer you wait, the scarier the task gets. Now it's not just a form to fill out. It's a symbol of your entire self-worth. But here's the reframe. Procrastination isn't a flaw. It's a nervous system in overload mode, trying to protect you from failure by avoiding the thing completely. The fix isn't discipline, it's compassion. Baby steps, permission to do it badly. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't finishing the task, it's just starting it, even when your brain screams, not yet. Fantasy refuge, also known as excessive daydreaming. You imagine stories in your head, full plot lines, dialogues, dramatic showdowns, alternate lives where you're famous, fearless, or finally saying what you really wanted to say during that fight in 2017. And at first, it's fun, it's creative, it's your brain's personal Netflix, no ads, unlimited budget. But then, you're still at the grocery store staring at frozen peas 30 minutes later, because in your mind, you were mid-battle riding a dragon through a breakup you haven't had yet. This is more than zoning out. This is maladaptive daydreaming, when fantasy stops being an outlet and starts becoming an escape hatch. It usually kicks in when reality feels overwhelming. Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're lonely, maybe life's just throwing too much at you and your brain's like, cool, we're gonna dip into this alternate universe for a bit. And hey, sometimes your mind just needs a break. But if you're spending hours inside your head because outside hurts too much, that's not daydreaming. That's emotional first aid, DIY edition. It can stem from trauma, anxiety, or unmet emotional needs, especially when the real world feels unpredictable, and the one in your head is perfectly scripted. The tricky part, the fantasy world feels better. You get to win. You get to connect. You get to control how things go. But the longer you stay there, the harder it is to engage with the messier, imperfect, but real life waiting outside your head. So next time you catch yourself drifting off into an imaginary career as a world-saving astronaut chef, ask, am I recharging or am I running? Either way, the first step back to reality is realizing you're not alone. If your brain saw itself in any of these patterns, you're not alone. You're not weak. You're just human with a system that's trying its best. Drop a comment with the one habit that hit hardest, or the one you never realized had a name. Hit like if you've ever coped in weird ways just to make it through the day. And subscribe if you're into ideas that stick, figures that sketch.